All right.
But he stayed for dinner. Now he's
Right.
I'll go to the bathroom.
All right. We prayed, so we're kind of ready to go here. And as I mentioned, I'll do a few comments, a brief devotion, and then we'll get right into some of the questions. Proverbs 22 and verse number 6 is just going to be the one verse I use as a catalyst, really as a springboard into this lesson. If you want to open your Bible and look at it, or they may have it on the screen behind me, or you may have it memorized, which I hope you do. Proverbs 22 and verse number 6. The Bible says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Train up a child. And that's an interesting word, train, and that is the emphasis, kind of as we talk about child rearing. Train up a child in the way he should go. And I love that last part. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. That is a principle similar to Philippians chapter 1 and verse 6, where the Bible says, being confident of this very thing, that he which begun a good work in you will what? Perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. Meaning that when somebody truly gets saved, God has started something inside of you. And even though they may go down the road and have a rough go at it or walk away from the Lord or whatever be the case, you can be confident in that what God started, he's going to bring to be. Similar to children. Train up a child. And if you do it right, I didn't say perfect, I just said right. How about this? The best that you can. The best that you can. When he is old, he will not depart from it. And that's a promise from the Word of God, and I take it for face value. Unfortunately, parenting is not something that everybody, I think, prepares for. Meaning, like, say for example, if you got on an airplane and the pilot introduced himself and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And they said, "Good, good." And he says, "Well, this is my first day on the job. Just thought I'd be a pilot." Doctor, getting ready to do surgery, right? My first day, I just thought today I'd be a doctor. Well, how many years do they go to be a doctor, roughly? Anybody know? For training? Yeah, it's 4 years, and then 4 years, and usually a 4-year fellowship, depending on if you do radiology or family practice or what have you. But parenting, it's like you have kids, and then, by the time they're 2 and, they're almost burning the house down, you're saying, what do we do? So unfortunately, parenting is a situation where sometimes it's on-the-job training. I get that. But I'm not even adverse to teaching parenting principles to kids when they're in high school. Not, because it's preparation. Now, we have kids, obviously, in this day and age, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Your goal when kids are at a young age, this is some couple things I want to give you just by way of introduction. One of the goals should be that you want your kids to lovingly respond to your word that comes from you the first time. What you're ultimately after, I think, is, and I can't emphasize this enough, is you're trying to get your child's heart. That's what you want. You want their heart. If you have their heart, you have them. And you want your kids to lovingly respond to you that first time. And so you're cultivating. A good book I'd recommend to you to read is Shepherding a Child's Heart. It's a very, very, very good book. I encourage you to read that. Really, that's what you're after. You're after their heart. If they do, in turn, if you get it, they'll respond the same way, if you get the heart, to God. Because that relationship that your kids have with you is going to be many times how they look at God. It's kind of how it works. And so that's the same way. You listen, in essence, you don't want God to have to turn up the volume in your child's life, if that makes sense. you don't want God to have to turn up the volume, in essence, really try to get their attention. And so when I say shepherding your child's heart and getting their heart and having them respond to you lovingly from the very beginning, then that really correlates to their relationship with God. Teaching your kids to be sensitive to your voice and responding to you, in turn, is teaching them to respond to God. Because you know what ultimately you want as a parent? You want your children to be sensitive to God's leading in their life and sensitive to God's voice in their life. That's what you want. Ultimately, what you want. Always remember, discipline is the ally of training. Discipline. Now listen, here training is, here is what, here is how, and here is why. So discipline is an ally of training. Always try to give your kids an answer to why you make certain decisions. Okay, so that's going to be a common one. We'll talk about that as we have some Q&A and go on there. But let me tell you some things not to do in that context here. Okay, the Bible says, like, certain kids say, what? Can't do that. Well, why can't we do that? Well, the Bible says so. So again, keep in mind that. Don't do that. Don't say, well, the Bible says you can't do that. Don't do that. That's not, and we've all maybe fallen to that before. That's not a good way to respond to your children. Oh, well, our church doesn't let us do that. You know what they're going to do? They're going to get bitter at the what? The church, right? Well, because I said so. And we've all probably been there before in the heat of a moment, and you're saying no, and they say why, and you say what? Because I said so. So I'm just trying to maybe you don't do it, but I'm just throwing it out there just in case. Give them an explanation the best that you can. Train them to understand this is why we don't do that. And I'll tell you, that is very important, because when you're training your children, again, that's Proverbs 22:6, training them up, you're trying them not to get them to look at this is what I don't do because, as opposed to you walking them through. Always do the best you can to give them an explanation as to why. Your ultimate goal is to get to the point where you've trained your kids, not just disciplined your children. Training is proactive. Discipline is reactive. Okay, I'm going to say it again. You guys can jot these down. You've got your notes, whatever you want to do. But training, when you're training your children, it's proactive. Discipline is what? It's reactive. Sometimes you're reacting to situations. You don't want to be putting fires out all the time. You don't want to be running around as a parent doing crises management where you're constantly, you talk about draining, you're just doing crises management. You're constantly having to write about something as opposed to training them. Training is a proactive. Discipline is reactive. Now, that was just by way of introduction. Before we get into some of the questions, I'm going to talk about tonight what we're seeing today with children, not just 12 and under, but in general, what we're seeing today, what we have done as Mary and I, what we've done as parents, and by no even stretch of the imagination do we feel like we've done a great job. I mean, we've got a lot of things that we feel like we could have done different, and so what we have done as parents, and then what we would do different as parents, and what's been the hardest challenge for us and what are the hardest years for us in terms of rearing the kids. But before we do that, we're just going to talk for kind of frank with you a little bit about what we're seeing today. And I mentioned this when I was praying, and this is kind of the scary part, the sad part, but it's real. And I think as adults we can talk about it openly. We are living in a day today where sexual promiscuity is at an unprecedented rate. It's nauseating. And I'm not just talking about in a heterosexual form or just, what was it before, I don't even remember, but it's just happened so fast. Just bad stuff that was before, like, oh my goodness, look what happened versus what's going on today. Kids are dealing with, sodomy is not just accepted in the Supreme Court ruling of 5-4 ruling. If you're a Bible-believing Christian, you know that sodomy is a sin. And by the way, so is adultery. And so, I don't just park just on one thing. Adultery is sin. Fornication is sin, right? Sex outside of marriage, that's sin. And so there's many kinds of sexual sins. But there is something, and one of the reasons why sodomy becomes such an issue is because of the agenda behind it. So if it seems like sometimes it gets parked on, it's because of the agenda behind it and what really it means. So we're dealing with that. We're dealing now where the Supreme Court ruled when Obama's second term in a 5-4 ruling. Matter of fact, the Chief Justice, John Roberts, was the deciding vote in that ruling, which was surprising to me. I remember sitting in the Supreme Court years ago, touring it, and right before William Rehnquist, the Chief Justice, had died, and thinking when John Roberts was appointed as a brand new justice, placed as the Chief Justice, like, wow, how did that happen? And I remember asking the law clerk, how did he get appointed as the Chief Justice as a brand new justice? She asked me if I was a lawyer. I said, no, I'm a Baptist preacher, but please give me the answer. And so I thought, okay, well, Bush appointed him. I thought, okay, we're going to have a majority here. And he's the one that made that deciding vote. It was probably 3 months later that the United States of America watched Bruce Jenner transition before our very eyes, right? Who I used to look at the Wheaties boxes and used to be like, because I was a pole vaulter and he did the decathlon. I mean, literally, I looked up and idolized this guy as an athlete. And he still is a guy, by the way, all right? So, having said that, now kids, see, we know what's right and wrong, but when you take little kids, especially unsaved kids, that are in public schools and in other settings, and by the way, it isn't just the public schools, it's also media platforms inundating our children, indoctrinating our children, people that they're around. It goes back to Leah's question about kids in the air, people that you're associations with. Now, before I go any farther and say something else, this session, I'm first of all going to talk about some of the negative things that are happening. It can get very discouraging. It is dark. It's very dark. It can be very discouraging. On the flip side of it, we're going to do the best we can to leave with a positive and talk about the solution and also acknowledge that God put us here for such a time as this. We're here for a reason. So it went from that to transgender to the bathroom issue, and you go down the line, and you see what's taking place now, and it's entered the schools and what have you. And here's the hardest part about it is the government, the United States government, playing a role in all of it, and local and federal as local governments as well, certain school boards or what have you. So that's some of the things that we're seeing today, okay? So let me stop there for a minute and ask, did I miss anything that you guys, anything come to mind? That I missed anything in terms of some of the real big issues that we're facing today for the kids? It's not just that. I know there's a few more. Anything come to your mind that, okay? Absolutely, yeah, electronics, which connect the dots there, with a lot of that. That's very good. And I have kind of something I'll mention about that as well. That'll be one thing that comes up for real is phones and kids and media and connectivity and what have you. We're going to talk about that tonight. That's good. Somebody else? Anything else come to mind that you feel like kids are facing today? Yes?
Well, it's on the same thing about what you're talking about. I can't tell you how many times I've watched shows thinking that, it's a show that's safe for kids because they make it look like, it's kid-friendly.
Right.
And all of a sudden, people are kissing.
Yeah.
Male and male,
Yeah.
female and male. And
Yeah.
it's just like, whoa.
Right, and that kind of, yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking and sad. Yeah. And we're talking, what did ABC change their name to, like Family or some Modern Family, or maybe that's just a show. I have no idea, but Family Hour is now promoting that kind of junk. Okay, anybody else before we go to anything else that you see or sense? Yes.
A lot of stuff around race and critical race theory and stuff like that coming up.
Yep.
In schools.
I don't think his mic is on, Mace. Go ahead. Okay, there it is. Good.
It's on.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's, man, you talk about a sensitive issue too, because you can't say anything without being called a racist if you say anything that's against the narrative. And that's just so sad, because what happened to civil discourse, you know? And I actually personally believe that there is an agenda behind that that is much larger than I could even fathom. And I'm not even a conspiratorialist. I almost feel like a lot of the division in our country with race is almost much larger than George Soros. I'm talking outside of this country. Influence is coming in to cause wedges in this country. And I'll tell you, they're doing such an effective job. It is causing people that were never, in my opinion, causing people that were never racist before to become a little bit prejudiced. Or like, I don't even know what you know, we're here in Washington. I haven't lived in the South, and I'm sensitive to the whole issue, and I try to be very careful with it. But it's actually driving a wedge that wasn't even here before at that degree. So, and that's being taught in schools. So no longer reading, writing, and arithmetic. It is, you know, those critical race theory in addition to social. It's basically social reengineering that is taking place.
Like going backwards.
Right. Exactly. I totally agree.
Progressive.
Yeah.
Be progressive about being regressive.
Yeah. It's the opposite of progress, right? You know what the opposite of progress is? Congress, right? All right. Yeah, I know. It's kind of lame. It's a dad joke. Yeah. But you guys laugh, so thank you. Okay, so what we're seeing today, I'm not gonna be just for time. My message this Sunday. Okay, let me just say, moms, happy Mother's Day. It's not really a Mother's Day message per se. I'm struggling a little bit with it because it's heavy on me, because Lord gave me a thought out of Judges chapter 2, and that's what we're seeing today, and it's basically this. It says in Judges chapter 2, listen to this, verse number 7. I'll go to verse 9. And Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died. Okay, so Joshua died, being 110 years old, and they buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnath-Heres in the Mount of Ephraim on the north side of Gash. And also, so Joshua died, all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, okay? And there arose another generation after them. And by the way, that's what happens when one generation dies, another one raises up, right? But it says this generation, the next word says, this generation which knew not what? They didn't know the Lord. What are we seeing today? What are we seeing in the streets today with all this rioting and all this anarchy and all this? Listen, we're watching a generation that doesn't know God. They don't know God. They don't know Him. Unprecedented perversion. And as I mentioned before, sad to say, the government playing a role in all of it. We're also seeing an opportunity to teach our kids, though. And you see situations like that. And if you're out in public, by the way, you can run to the farthest parts of the hills of Montana or Wyoming or wherever it is you can feel you want to go, and you just do as God leads you. Forgive me if I ever come across the wrong way. If God leads somebody out of Open Door, it hurts my heart as a pastor, but I understand it, and I try to put myself in your shoes as well. So don't misunderstand me when I say this at all. I'm not trying to be condescending at all. It's just hard sometimes to deal with. But when you see somebody in public, even public displays of affection that might be of the same sex, you can't run from that. You're in the world but not of the world. That's an opportunity to teach your kids when they ask you, why are this happening? Why are two girls kissing or whatever? You can use that as an opportunity to teach them, right? And show them the right way. All right, now before we get into what we've done as parents, what we've done right, what we've done wrong, things that we would do different, let's take a few questions from you guys. Anything, this is not just related to what we're seeing today. Let's take a few questions from you guys before we get into some of the things that we've done right or maybe what we feel we've done wrong. Any question you have as a parent or something you feel like you feel that is a challenge for you today as a parent, right? Who's going to be bold? Yes, Caitlin, go ahead. He's got your mic real quick for folks online. Yeah. Hi.
I really don't want this. I'm not this bold. No, along those lines, and Seth and I were talking about this because I feel like we've failed in that way because I feel like I've worked really hard to preserve their innocence, and I don't want my kids to know what that is or to, you know what I mean? And so we've had this conversation of how do you balance, because I fear the familiarity with it. So if they know what that is and then we explain that that's wrong, like, I don't know what my question is. What's my question? And then I struggle because we have 10-year-olds and a 4-year-old. And so it's going to be the 4-year-old's going to know what the 10-year-old's, right? And so that's hard because I understand explaining to the 10-year-olds, but I don't want my 4-year-old to see and recognize. You know what I don't know what I'm asking.
Well, I do
don't
know.
how to
You're kind of,
balance
how
that.
do you, because it's kind of like you've tried to shelter. You've done, if I understand it correctly, and Seth, you can clarify as well, but it sounds like you're trying to.
Questions only, please.
Right. You're trying to shelter the best you can, if I understood correctly, and yet you feel like maybe, well, should I be sheltering? Because eventually they're going to see it, and maybe do I, and you know, and that is what. I'll give you a good example. So, for whatever reason, when Rebecca was born, we said, we're not going to give her sugar. Right, there you go. Or even just whatever, right? And now you go to Disneyland, right? But we were gonna. So we waited. This is no joke. 2 straight years, no sugar, outside of Kim Despain. One time, I think Kim gave her sugar.
At least
And-
you've been about it anymore.
So basically, we tried to shelter them. So and again, to this day, you know, we're like, was that a mistake? And you know, because then now she can't put the candy down. So no, you try, but eventually it's going to come out. To answer your question, if I understand it correctly, I think you just have to. It's a situational thing. Each opportunity to teach your kids, because they're going to see things, and you'd rather hear from you than other people. You know, so,
I guess
Yeah.
my question was, is the sheltering wrong?
right. Because eventually, even out of your home, when they get out of your home, then they're out in the, you know, it's like, whoa, you know, so, yeah, very, very tough. All right, somebody else. Yes, Anthony.
To piggyback off of that, and then I have a follow-up question that's separate. How do you shelter, if it's like within your family, 1, and then 2, like this is kind of perfect timing because we got a form from our oldest daughter, she's 10, and she's going to 6th grade next year, and there was a form to opt out of sex education.
Okay.
And like, what do we opt her out? Do we not? You know, in terms of sheltering. So, I guess it kind of.
So with family, I'd just say it's situational. You're going to have to just use your discretion on that. Pray, talk to your wife, make a decision. It's tough with every family, depending on the circumstances. In terms of, you know, we got in our church, I think we have about a third public school, a third private school, and a third homeschool, roughly, kind of right around there. So it's just a unique mix. And I think every parent, when it comes to that, I do not ever say that this is the only way. You do as a parent what you feel is best or what you feel God would have you to do. There's no Bible verse that you're going to be able to teach somebody that the private school is this or only homeschool. I know parents that homeschool, that I'll just be honest with you, I don't think they should homeschool. Oh, okay. Right. And I'm not, I mean, you know, it's like, you know, Nemo is the teacher, and it's like the whole time they're watching Nemo. So, and I mean that with all due respect. I'm not trying to be condescending. I just mean that it's not everybody's thing. It's not their strength. And so to get to your point, you know, it's different for every parent. I can only tell you what I would do. I would opt out, and I would teach my kids at home those things. And I've had those conversations. I'll tell you, and the question that, you know, the birds and the bees is the way we say it in a very politically correct way. But I've had those conversations with our kids, and you just do it as the Lord leads, and you just talk as open. And some people, they're shy, or usually the husband or the wife, whoever feels more comfortable doing it. I've done it. So you can teach them at home. If it were me, I would teach them at home. And knowing that they're going to see and hear certain things at school, that gives you the opportunity as a parent to sit down with them and teach them, okay, I understand that, and yes, this is going on in the world, and God knew this was going to happen. Here's what God says about this situation. Yeah. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that? No? No. Okay. She will in time.
So in that,
Yeah.
you say I would teach them at home.
Yeah.
So in that, you say that you would teach them at home. So A, would you start at 10, right? Number one.
Yeah.
And then number two, are we just talking the birds and the bees, or are we talking, hey, Bob and Billy get together, that happens, like, are you talking same-sex stuff, or are you talking, how far do you take that at 10, at 11?
Good question. I think we would be surprised how observant the children are. I mean, I'm oblivious. I think the kids see everything. That's how I feel. And usually, ladies have more intuition, I think, than some guys do. I can't speak for all guys. I know for me, but I will say that the birds and the bees So when it comes to I'm trying to say this politically correct because it is awkward in this setting. Talking to your kids about themselves or their anatomy or their things, this is what's going on in your body. This is what's going to happen in your body, right? This is natural. I think it's a mistake for parents to teach their children that the feelings that they have are not natural, okay? I think that's a mistake. And that's and things can get conflicted in their minds, especially what's being pushed at them. I think and I will say this, every parent in here tonight is going to have to do what they feel right with, and each kid is different too, Brother Seth, that's going to be on a situational basis as well. With the Billy and Bob situation, you're going to see it everywhere you go, from a billboard to we're trying to watch a golf tournament, or you're going to watch a Super Bowl, you're going to watch a game, or you're going to drive down the road, or you're going to walk in the mall. You can't avoid it, and it doesn't matter. I mean, right now, Boise is turning purple, and it's happening. They're just flocking to Boise, right? So in places that are, the conservative areas. Well, my point is, those are situations I feel you have straight conversations with them, say, hey, this is not right. This is of the devil. God ordained marriage between a man and a woman. And this is what, and you just talk openly about it. And the younger you can do it, if you have peace about it, the earlier and more impressionable it will be, because they're in those developmental age. It's like that first mentioned principle. When my kids were little, before they could even speak, as soon as the moon was out, I'd say, who made the moon? God did. I mean, he said, well, that's just pretty. No, it's not elementary. I did it. I think I did it yesterday. No. The point is, it sounds like, indoctrination sounds like a bad word, but it's not if you're trying to indoctrinate them in the things of God, right? So, Bill and Bob, talk openly, and then in terms of the birds and the bees, use your discretion, but I'd rather tell them than have the schools, and things of that nature. Okay, good, very good questions. All right, somebody else? Yes.
Any advice on if your child doesn't want to talk about anything? So you're you think that, okay, this is time that maybe their friends are talking about it, and I'm I want them to hear it from me, but you obviously know that they feel really uncomfortable. They feel something is wrong. But I want them to know that there's certain things that are beautiful about creation and how God made a man, in relations. But then you want that beautiful aspect to it, but they totally are feeling like something's wrong about it. I don't know what, or they're embarrassed. How do I push it, or do I just kind of let her? Even talking about the body, how beautiful and your
Yeah.
flower,
Right,
you know.
right.
But what if there is just like shut the door? I don't want to talk about it. Like, and then I'm like, okay, there's little books here. You know,
Right.
how do I
That's
just
a good.
give her
That's
her
a really
own
really good
space?
question.
Like,
I can just tell you I've encountered it because I've had that talk with the kids, and as they got older, as I tried to reinforce the things I taught, it got a little bit more awkward the older they got. You know, before I was just, bless God, this is how it is. You know, and you need to know this. And then, and so, first of all, understand you're not alone. You're not alone. That's normal. The younger, the easier. But then the younger, the less descriptive you are as well. You're just kind of given the basics. So it is very hard. It's very awkward.
I think too, when you're talking about the innocence, like you just keep holding back because you don't feel like they should know certain things yet. Like
Right.
you just want to hold their innocence. But,
Right.
And I think that's kind of where we got to, and then we're like, well, friends are already starting to talk about it.
Yep.
We need to do this. But,
Yep.
So
Yeah, I would say keep trying. Pray. It's okay if books that you approve of are there to talk about, to show it as well. They're probably already seen more than we would want them to, or hearing things more than we would want them to. And you know, you have it in a church as well. It doesn't matter where it is because you have all kinds of groups in churches, and so you're going to get it in churches. You can't hide from it. It's just not possible. But I think I would just pray, look for open doors, but don't give up. That's what I would say. All right? Somebody else. Liz, you give the, yeah.
How
Hold it up real close so they can hear you.
how would you maybe? So our oldest son is 9, and I feel like we are constantly saying no, like a lot, like no, you can't watch that show that your other friend that's the same age is watching because we just don't think it's appropriate. Like we're just constantly, it's just always no, 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 and it usually has to do with media typically. How do you balance that without constantly discouraging them or making them feel like they're so different, or maybe mom and dad are just mean, you know? Like how do you know what I mean? Like I don't know how to ask that.
Well, I'm gonna address it real quick. I'm gonna let Mary say something about it as well because we've dealt with this. She can talk openly about it. I have as well, but we've dealt with it, and it's so common. That's a very, very, very good question, and we've been right where you are. And so I'll just say it up front because it's in my notes as well. On media, you mentioned media. I think Rachel brought it up, the connectivity. We tried to just let our kids watch what they could, but we got a VidAngel and got Clear Play and everything they possibly could. It's all a matter of standards as well. If your kids don't watch Disney, then it's going to be a little bit harder for you, you know. Oh, okay, all right. She's. So my point is you're going to have to sit down with them on a regular basis and communicate. Just communicate. I like to do proactive communications. So I will sit down at the table with the kids, and I did this for years, and I don't call it family meetings. We just sit down and try to do it casual. I get razzed for that. But listen, I do not believe as a parent that you can ever over-communicate. You cannot do it. So we would proactively sit down and we would say, just as a reminder, hey, this may be odd, or we don't do, these are some things that we've made decisions as a family and as Christians. I never once said because I'm a pastor or never would I ever do that. We are Christians. And these are the biblical principles in which these guide us. And then the questions came less to us because they understood. I'm not even going to ask because we're Christians and we don't do this, as opposed to just no, 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 no. And eventually they see they could get some, progress made. And proactive, just as an example, and it can happen to anybody, I emailed myself today and said, sit down with the kids, because Rebecca's driving now, so watch out. Mike has been driving forever. And I have a note on my email that I emailed myself to sit down with him this week and say, just remember when you're driving through a neighborhood, there's kids that you understand what would happen if if a kid ran out, if you're going too fast in a neighborhood. Understand what would happen if you hit a kid. If you texted while you were driving and you went off the road and you hit somebody else. I'm thinking proactively to remind the kids, and at least I want to know, I told them again, be careful, understand this. So I don't think you can over-communicate, Liz. My answer would be have meetings that you call, don't call them meetings, that you remind them again, hey, just, and keep it positive, not negative. Keep it positive, okay? You have anything you want to add to that? No, Anna's, go ahead.
Well, I'm laughing about the family meeting because he burnt everybody out on his family meeting.
I did not.
So he came home from church from meetings, and then he came home to do meetings, and we're just ordered around. So that's the laugh.
Oh my goodness, that is not true.
That was.
So should we keep the family meeting agenda to 1 page or 2?
Oh, that is not true. And now all this. What, Kurt? Staff meetings? Adjourned.
I knew I should have been censored.
Well, get to the point.
So, as far as shows and media, I would say there was a few things that we didn't let them watch, and I know one particular, I think it's even Disney. It was titled for high school, and I kept using that as the example. Well, when you're in high school, you can watch that. And so when we got to high school, then we could watch that show that she wanted to watch when she was like 7. And she realized, oh, maybe that's why. Even though it is corny, it's, a corny show, but how they portrayed teenagers was not good for a 7-year-old, And so kind of just talking through the show, like maybe the show and you're like, well, I don't really like this part of the show, and this is why I don't want you to watch it,
So more detail is basically, that's a good point. You add, if this is a specific question about something, address that particular question about, can we watch this so-and-so is? Say, well, let's talk about what's in it. Do you feel, and some things we try to learn to do is, do you feel comfortable, and how do you think, let them respond to you? And then it's like, oh. So that's a good question. Very good question. All right. Somebody else have a question? Okay.
I can't stand kids being on the phone and on that social media all the time. If I had my way about it, they wouldn't be on it at all. But unfortunately, the kids in our house are on it all the time. And, everyone has to be on the same page in the house. Because when you're trying to say no, no, you can't
Right.
have this, and somebody's feeding it and saying, oh, sure you can,
Right.
then it can become a problem.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and it's also something that I think everybody deals with. Matter of fact, I'm going to address that. I've got that in here as well. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. Okay, before we go into just kind of this part of as far as what we've done and things that we would do different. Anybody else have anything? Any questions? Any thoughts? Challenges you face? Yes.
This is a big challenge for me, transitioning to working from home. Then my daughter does homeschool. As a leader of the house, how do you go from having it turn on to work to instantaneously having to be a father? One of the things that, it's a blessing and a curse is having to work far away. Is you get that decompression time of being in the car, ready to come home to your kids. Whereas now the nature of my work is 3 to 4 hours of meetings, and immediately the headphones come off and it's dad, 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 and
Right.
there's not that moment to just say, I need to collect myself before I can take on the 50 questions that are about to come my way.
Only 50.
Only
Right.
50. I cut it off at 50.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Chloe is so smart. That's your biggest. She's very, very sharp. Yeah, good question. I would just say, have a meeting with your family. No, so I would try to schedule it, and just because you need that, and they also need it as well. Your wife's going to need it. Take Chloe from her. Take the kids from her. Let her have that time. Okay. Give her that time, and then also say, hey. And so if you communicate it ahead of time, and you lay it all out, that way you both are on the understanding. Because so it's crises management would be each week you kind of go as they flow on, done with the meetings, the headphones come off, and then you're okay, here they are, versus this is what we've already planned. So if it was me, a prudent man foreseeth, I would just plan it. Okay. Yeah, good question. All right, somebody else have a question before we go? Yep, Rachel. So this is not marriage? No, I'm just kidding.
No. I have two kids that are very different. One is very academic, and one is goofy and not so academic. But he's good at other things. Like, he's a very sweet kid. He likes helping with little kids. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but they get into a competitive thing and quarrel a lot about things like this while they're doing school. She'll answer his questions that he's reading out loud, and he's in 6th grade and she's in 3rd grade. And then he
loves that.
No, he'll call himself stupid. It's actually kind of sad.
Oh.
He'll be like, I'm just dumb, and and so I'm just trying to manage that. And did you guys have that with your two at all? And how did you kind of overcome?
That's you. That's not me.
I would say yes and no, but yes, that we have competitiveness for sure. And as the homeschool overseer, it was I tried most of the time to use it to my advantage. But then if they're, having issue with each other, just turn it around, how to treat people, right? And bringing each other, nurturing your brother or your sister, bringing that back to that conversation, and then the not demeaning verbiage. You're getting it, or whatever he's frustrated with. You're getting it at your time, whatever, and just constantly just have that comforting conversation, because we're all learning things at different times. She's going to not get something that he totally gets, right. So in them, because as for us in the communication, especially with siblings, I don't know if this is in your notes later, but you're going to be your sibling's best friend. And that sibling's going to look for someone else to be their best friend, but nobody's going to be the best friend like the sibling will be. And so, and that's in society there. Everybody's looking for this best friend when it's right there living with you, if you do have siblings, right? And so you see that sibling rivalry, and that's supposed to be okay, and it is in TV, but not for real. So, so we just have to remember that TV is TV, right. And home is home.
And I would say that we observe that there's no doubt in our mind that Rebecca and Micah are best friends, without a doubt. They would never even probably admit that, but they care for one another. Like, it's scary how much they, really look out for each other and care for one another. So, but that doesn't mean they didn't have some real heated, not so fun debates, and ended up in the principal's office. So that's a good question, and common. You're not alone with that. Anybody else? Any challenges, questions? Yes, Seth, right over here.
How do you handle, first off, I guess a two-part question. Number one, how do you handle the amount of activity that a child does outside of the home, right? Extracurricular, sports, things like that, number one. And then number two, when do you decide, I know both of you had kids in public school sports, right? Mm-hmm. At what point do you introduce that? Is that in elementary? Do you wait till high school? Again, two-part question of how do you keep your family not in 48 different places at one time?
Yep.
And then when do you introduce public school sports
Yeah.
and those influences?
Yeah, I'd say when and if, and I think every parent's different, but that's a good question. Some parents may not. We did. Our kids played every sport that they could in the public schools, but yet they were homeschooled. I'll explain that in a minute. Your first question, in terms of time, our kids understood from the very beginning the most important thing outside of their personal relationship with Jesus Christ and their family was their local church. And it had nothing to do with me being in the ministry. And this was, well before that. As long as it doesn't interfere with church and there's a balance to it, I think that's how active you can or should or shouldn't be. Okay, so that you just got to balance it out with your schedule, and I think you understand that as a pastor's son. You kind of there's some like pastors or parents that wouldn't let their kids ever like miss a prayer meeting on Friday night at 8:00, even care if it was the All-Star game. My child isn't going to miss anything, or they won't even miss a midweek service, or they won't miss. That's each parent needs to do what they feel is best. I've seen it both ways. I've seen the extreme, and I've seen the other way, where it's just we don't care. They'll go to every sporting event. I think my opinion is balance is the key, and I think we try to do it in a balanced way. In terms of parents with their kids in public sports and different, that's again a parent decision. Micah did cross country, golf, track. Rebecca did golf. She did swim team. Micah did wrestling, et cetera, all the sports at the schools. It was an opportunity for him to witness. Rebecca brought her whole swim team to church. Micah brought a bunch of golf kids to church. I would say that is a decision you have to make as a parent if you want to do that. And when? That's a good question. When did we start? As far as was it junior?
We didn't start public.
It was junior high because Micah was in the
Micah did
Alderwood.
8th grade.
8th grade.
8th grade sports,
Yeah.
and then Rebecca started as a freshman.
Yeah, that was the age we did it then. Good question. Anything else? Anybody else? Yes, Anna. I can't help you with PJ. I try 40 hours a week.
Oh, I tried to take him back, but they won't take him. My question is, I try to teach the kids to do their Bible devotion first thing they wake up.
Yeah.
So our thing for a while was no breakfast until you read your Bible, and I felt like a Nazi, but I won't let them eat.
Yeah.
And obviously, I was just like, you have to feed yourself first, your spiritual self, but and then I'll get busy at work or whatever, so they'll, days would go on and they would eat or whatever and forget it. And so devotion goes, whatever. And then another, I guess, 2 questions. And then another question, if they say they read it, but I'm not there sitting there and watching them, they read it, how can I say, well, I don't believe that you read it? Can I just say, I trust you that you read it and God knows, he's watching you. But I mean, how do I make it I just want them to do it naturally and do it because they want to do it, not because Mama said so and because you're not going to eat anything until you read it. You know what I mean?
Man shall not live by bread alone.
Well, that was the idea,
Is this a Russian thing or is this just... Hey, Mace, can you flip that air off?
I'm
for a
losing
minute?
weight.
It's just a little cold. It's a little... I know it's been hard to get it right. You did everything I asked, but it's just a little chilly in here. So I think the first question is, I'll even admit I tried, not with the food, but I've always said a policy and standard we've had in our home is
Policy.
A policy. Okay.
And a procedure.
And a procedure. So in their job description. Anyway, I was going to say.
So messed up.
You don't touch anything. Your phone. That's the main thing. I never went as far as eating. But don't pick up your phone or anything until you've done your devotions. I tell the kids, I tell her, we don't do that. We start in our home with the Bible. It's just first thing. You don't want your mind starts getting your emails or your this or that post or this there. Right off the bat, you're losing you're losing what God had. The Bible says that those that seek me early shall find me. So there's a principle in the scriptures that I always think God needs to be first. So I would reinforce that. I don't know if I'd go so far as the food. Maybe they could have some food while they do their devotions. I don't know. I mean, I don't want you guys to get mad at me. I'm just saying. So that's what I would do there. In terms of them reading it. Yeah. Right. Right. In terms of them, their devotions, I've done the same thing. I've asked, okay, give me the verse. I always ask, what verse stood out to you the most? What did God speak to you about? Right? And Rebecca's always got this great thing to say, and Micah will just kind of stare at you for a while. They're just different. So I always ask, what did God speak to you about? You know?
Well, if they say they don't remember, would you tell them to go back and reread it and then come and tell me?
No, I've never said go back and reread it, I don't think.
I don't think so.
Okay. So that's what we do.
I think, Anna, though, it's good to set the precedent like you are, but also you want it to come from their heart naturally, right?
That's what I'm asking, because I don't want them to do just because I said so, and because they're like, oh my gosh, mom said to do it, and she's gonna whoop me or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I want them to do it like I want it to be a habit, and I want them to do it because they enjoy it.
Yeah.
So having the Bible out visibly,
Yeah.
whether it's yours or theirs, maybe at the kitchen table, you stack them all there. So have them out visibly.
Yeah.
The other thing is when you do yours, where do you do yours? Do they see you do your devotions?
No, because I do it early in the morning and it's quiet.
Yeah.
The mom,
Yeah. And then the other thing would be even at mealtime, if you are always at dinner together, start bringing that up as a conversation. Maybe just have them write on a 3x5 card what spoke to them that morning, and then bring it to dinner or something. But if you are making it dictatorship, obviously that's gonna probably not go in your favor later.
Yeah. You want it to be something that they eventually will do on their own when they're not in your home. And we've tried it at night as well. We'll do a devotion. Generally, the dinner table is a good time to get a little booklet and read a devotion together at night at the table as well. That is a one we've done for years. Okay, anything else? Any other questions? Before I just wanted to go over some things we've done and haven't done or should have done or what have you. Okay. All right, and we'll try to wrap this up in a few minutes. So what we've done as parents, number one, as I just jotted down, that we've tried to be consistent, okay? That's just, if you were to ask me, what would be the number, if you came to me and said, what would be the number one thing that you would give me as a parent, that you would admonish me to do as a parent, that you feel would help our kids the most? What would be the number one thing? And I would say, for you personally, as a mother and a father, to be consistent. Kids are like God's little spies. They see everything, and if we're inconsistent in our walk, and no, I didn't say perfect, I just said consistent. That's the key. There's times where I've lost my testimony, or I got mad, or I yelled, or whatever, and I just have to go to the kids and just say, listen, Dad lost his temper, he got frustrated, he said, whatever, and just get it right and just explain to them, But consistency. Try to be consistent. That is the most important. Kids can spot hypocrisy. So it goes to Anna's question, too. You can't ask your kids to do that if you're not doing that. And I would admonish every parent as well. The principle is the same for parents. Those that seek me early shall find me. Always start the day with God alone. All right, so I'd say try to be consistent. Also, set clear boundaries. Set clear boundaries, and that is show distinction. So Ezekiel 42 is a very good reference and principle, if you will. It says this, speaking of the temple, he says he measured it by 4 sides. It had a wall round about, 500 reeds long and 500 broad. He says this, to make a separation between the sanctuary and the profane place. Now, I'm telling you that in principle to say, teach your children the difference between your home, which your home is a sanctuary, okay? It's a sanctuary, and the profane place. And you make the distinction. You teach them and show them the distinction, okay? We are a Christian family. We are a Christian home. And these are some things we do as Christians. We don't do these things, okay? If you were to ask me, what have we done as parents and tried to be consistent with? Number 3, very simple. When it comes to media in our home, okay? So I can just say it with no hesitation that we have made it a point that we've always been careful for what is watched by us and our kids in our home. There's a million movies that I wanted to see, but I didn't watch because I'm a Christian. I'm a child of the living God. And so I've had to make a decision to just say, I'm just not going to watch that. And now it's not just movies, it's YouTube, it's this, it's that. And so you have a decision as an individual to make. As a parent, when your kids, goes back to Liz's question and a few others, what do you do? Very simple. To me, I'd say, yeah, we can watch that on ClearPlay or on VidAngel. VidAngel used to be good. It's not as good anymore, but filter it out. You can take out the sexual immorality, the violence, whatever, just filter it out, and you can watch it. Or ClearPlay. And we have both, and I just said I'm spending the money because I'm not paying to have the Lord's name said in vain in my home. And so I don't want it. And so I would say as parents, you cannot bring that into your home and sit there and watch that stuff and expect your kids, what you do in moderation, they will do in excess. So any questions on that point there about media before I go to the next one? Because I just kind of passed over it. I'm just trying to admonish you and encourage you. It's a big deal because the light of the body is the eye. And the eye affects the heart. It is the gateway to the soul. And it is, understand the word media, okay? Medium. You know what a medium is, right? And the devil is the prince and the power of the air. The air. The spirit that now works in the children of disobedience. So what's coming through the airwaves? And then goes into our kids. We have the control over that when they're young, and so it's tough. It's very tough. Live that before our children. Also, what we've done as parents, we've had fun. We've had a blast. Have a great time with your kids. Take your kids on vacations. Plan the vacations. You'll never get to the point at the end of your life and say, I wish I would have spent more time at work. Right. You'll say, I wish I would have spent more time with my children. So I'm telling you, I'm a big believer. If a family in our church says, hey, we're going on vacation, I say, awesome. I say, great, I love it. The staff, I've made sure all of our staff has the same vacation schedule as Costco or Boeing or Microsoft. I'm still waiting. I'm going to try to get mine as well. No, Kurt, he says, you have it, you just don't take it. But I'm telling you, I do that. Why? I want them to take off. Mason just took 3 weeks. Was that 4 weeks, Mason? Okay. And took a road trip. Praise God. Make time for your family. I'd also say this. Be the parent, not their friend. Yeah. Be the parent. To be their friend. You would have been, lived 2 doors down from your children, okay? You're not their friend, you're their parent. That doesn't mean that you can't have a great time with your kids. I have a blast with my kids. And last couple things, real quick. What we've tried to do as parents, clear communication. I've already said it, and I'm going to say it again, because you can't over-communicate to your kids. You cannot, it's impossible. I even say, does that make sense? I sometimes have them say it back to me to make sure that they got it. You have not communicated until the individual you're communicating to gets what you're trying to say. And so faith comes by hearing, and sometimes that's instruction from mom and dad. And then the last thing is this: balance is the key. Balance. Open Door Baptist Church, Pastor Kenny and I talk about this quite a bit. Open Door Baptist Church, we're not a perfect church by any stretch, but one thing we've tried to do is be a balanced church. We're not legalistic. We don't get into the fundamentalist, legalistic standards, although I'm a fundamental Bible believer. I don't get into the legalism side of things. We've tried to be balanced, and you need to be balanced in your home, okay? You know, I know that there's sometimes you would walk out in certain areas and you see a family come out of a store and they look like they're Amish, but they're really not. They're independent Baptists that go to the church up the road, and it's like, you know, but they're almost Amish, and it's like there's a balance somewhere in there. I don't know where it is. So I just be balanced. Was that bad? Oh, perfect. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay? All right. Technically, we had scheduled. We have 9 minutes left for any questions, and then what we would do different. Probably turn the camera off and what we do different, just in case somehow word gets out. But we got 9 minutes left, and we're on schedule. Anybody have any questions on, you know, kind of what we've tried to do? And by the way, we've probably made more mistakes than we have had successes. And so we'll be the first to admit that. We do know that our kids have got all kinds of issues. We're very aware of that, but guess what? So do you and so do I. We all have it. As Tony Shirley said, we all got issues. Okay, anything else? Any other questions? Yes?
When it comes to media, I'm the type of person where if my kids don't have a phone until they move out, I'm fine with that. If I end up caving before, then how do you monitor social media? Because just knowing all the things that go on and wanting to be an overprotective parent, I'd almost want to be militant in the sense of your phone is always unlocked. I have access to everything that you have. Plus the nature of my work, like I just know too much about technology.
Yep.
I mean, is that a healthy thing as a parent? And how do you not come across as like the police state of give me your phone, I want access to it at all times, if it gets to that point, and just trusting that they're making the right decisions?
Well, I think it depends on the age. So you're going to have stages. The kids didn't get phones until 12-ish, but even the people that created the phones didn't give their kids phones. So that's a conversation to have with kids. Understand the creator of it didn't give it to them. So that's a quick conversation there.
She's talking about Steve Jobs, who didn't allow their kids to have, you know, it was like 1 hour a day or some weird thing, whatever.
You probably know better than even we know, maybe, and maybe others out there. In your phone, there's all kinds of restrictions that you can block all kinds of things. So you can get that taken care of quickly, you know that. And then have an open conversation on a regular basis as they get older, right? When they're 10, of course, if that's where you choose to go. If you wait until they're 15, do they pay for it? That's a conversation. And just building that relationship of communication so that it doesn't feel like you said militant. It doesn't feel that way, right? Because you want them to not want to not want to go in that direction. And there's plenty of good things out there, and you know that, as well as the evil stuff. And so if they're healthy in their relationship with you and God, they're not gonna, want to go in those directions.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough question. I'll get to the phone. So she said the age for us. Okay, so I'll just address that now, and Seth asked that question as well. I feel like we caved a little. I think in retrospect, I probably would not have allowed. Was it really 12?
We talked about it. I don't remember. Becca was.
I thought she was 13 or 14.
I don't remember. We tried to get it out.
Yeah. So I feel like that for us was a little early. If I had to do it over again when it came to phones, here's what I would do. I would go with where you can get it to where they can just text, they can call, right? And that's all they really need to do. And the other stuff is they don't really need it, you know. That's just me, and that might be that I might be making a mistake on that because, you know, 3 years later when they're out of the house, then they're going to have it. So it's very hard. Every parent has to do what they feel is best for their kid.
I do remember we did try to nail Becca down on when she got it, and I think she said 12. I know the year before we got her to hold off on it because she was still in school. We got her the American Girl doll, so we held off for a while with the American Girl doll.
Yeah,
and then we went,
right.
and then she did get a phone, but we had stipulations on it that she wasn't communicating with her friends, and the reason for that was
it was no
young
texting
people,
boys.
No, that was later. Even girlfriends. Tend to be rude and mean and inconsiderate, and so she wasn't allowed to communicate with her age. It was, I don't even know why she had the phone.
I will say this as well. Speaking, just before I forget, because I know we're running out of time, I want to say this real quick, is one thing we did have, it wasn't a policy, it was a rule, whatever you want to call it. It was the gospel in our home. Every night, every phone, and I would tell you this as a parent, I wouldn't sugarcoat this, do what you want, whatever. I would tell you as a parent that phone goes out on the kitchen table or on the counter. Do not, this is just me, I would not allow my kids to bring their phone in their rooms overnight, period. We didn't do it, we wouldn't do it. And we had them put out, and even when their friends came over to stay their night, there were the phones stacked up. Like, whose house is this? Whatever, bro. This is what we're doing. So, and that's what we did. And just because, you know, to this day, there's kids up at 1 and 2 and 3 in the morning, and they're just glued to their phones. And if you have that much time, and you're just sitting there, and it's just this abyss to the pit of hell inside of that, you know, their minds are going to be warped. They can be warped in one day or 1 week or 1 month and warped. And obviously pornography is a whole separate issue on a phone that we haven't even dealt with in this meeting, that the kids, I mean, you talk about scarring somebody's mind and destroying their minds and just destroying their relationships later in their marriage and whatever be the case. And I'll just take it a step further. I am an ardent believer that because of phones and social media and the agenda of the devil himself, some little kid who's 11 years old that lives in Iowa, who's walking through the cornfields and goes to his mom and says, you know, I think I'm no longer a boy, I'm a girl. Well, that didn't happen outside of this device right here in his head. That's not what, and it's happening at an unprecedented rate, and it's this thing right here inside their brain. So it is, listen, it is programming our children. And even with some of the curriculums in the schools, it is unfortunately a grooming. It's just bad. There's just, I mean, it's sick, it's wrong, it's sadistic. And God have mercy on their soul, because God's going to, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, the people that do this stuff. Okay, so that's that. Phones later, text calls, social media. We didn't really let our kids do social media. Micah didn't until he was 18, and then Rebecca did, I think, at 16. I made the mistake and let her get an Instagram. And, you know, at 16, you know, do what you want as a parent. It's just... I feel like I wish I would have listened better at times to my kids when they're talking. Listen better, been less selfish, teach them to drive a little bit earlier than we did. Dating, we were too soft. I felt like this boy that liked Rebecca at camp, that we just kind of like, oh, he's a neat boy, and all of a sudden they were talking too much, right? I don't care if it's on it, but he's a great guy. It's just we started too early. Don't give me that look. What? I don't. What? They still talk, right? So we were too soft on that. All right.
Sounds like you'll be having a family meeting.
No. The hardest years for us, to be honest with you guys, is actually not the terrible twos. It's not the preteens. It's not the teen years. The hardest years for us have been these years right now. Mike is 18, almost 19. Rebecca's 21, almost 22. Not hard in the sense that they're doing bad. It's now that everything we've poured into them, this is the stage where they're going to, make the big decisions and go out into the real world. And this has been a trying, at least I know for me, and we've talked about it, they're going to get married. They're going to pick the right guy. And just so you understand, dads, there is not the right guy out there. And, so I say that to say, this has been the hardest for us, has been these years here. Rebecca graduates from college next year. Mike is on a full ride scholarship, running, doing great. I just think it's been really hard for us. So 8:29, anything else? Do you want to add anything? Anybody else? Yes, Liz?
I have one
We'll do-
other
yeah, we'll
question
do
I
it quick.
thought you were going to touch on,
Yeah.
which is, so for example, our neighbors are in junior high and high school. So
Oh, yeah, that goes to Leah's question.
Yes, in 8th and 9th grade, and my son is 9 years old,
Yeah.
and they're like the only kids in the neighborhood.
Oh,
Like,
great
the
question.
kids across the street, they don't want to play with our kids because our kids don't wear masks outside, and parents have said, please wear masks, and we've just kind
Oh,
of said
yeah.
no. So, so the only ones that will play are these older kids, and sometimes they can just be kind of, especially the younger, older kid, can just be really negative. And we've tried to talk to Matthew and say, we don't want you spending a ton of time. They have a bad family situation, so us as like youth workers, we're just like, we want to love them and show them love and invite them to
Right.
meals, but we also want to be like, get away from our kid, in a nice way. So what do you do? How do you, because we don't know how to be consistent. I'm not going to lie. I don't know how to be consistent in this situation. So, and I know that I think Leah has like the same situation.
Yeah, I was just
she
going to
has
read
going
Leah's.
on.
I'm glad you brought that up. Similar situation, preteen parenting. How do you reinforce with our kids they need to maintain integrity in their actions, especially as it relates to interactions with non-Christians, friends? We already see the desire to kind of be like them or influence our kids in a negative way. Okay, so it kind of ties in with yours. So I think the number one thing is that I would do, I think to Leah's question about that influence, I would say teach your kids the courage to be different. The courage to be different, to stand out. See, and I don't mean different like the world would say different, in that, we're pilgrims passing through. We are strangers in this world. We're, citizenship is in heaven. When you take those open communication times, Leah, to talk with them about, hey, this is who we are as Christians, and it's okay to openly talk about that and stand your ground for things that you believe in. And so I think that's the first thing. In terms of outside and kids in the neighborhood, I go back to Mrs. Blue said to me, we always had the kids come to our place as opposed to letting them go there. So we do not send our, and then this gets into a whole separate issue with all the weird things that take place today, and you not watching your kids or not being around your kids with everything. When we've done that as well, we pretty much, hey, can we go to, so actually they can come here. So that's kind of what we do in that regard, is just, and if they're out in front of your house or whatever, just keep a close eye. I'd keep a close eye. Use your discretion. If the parents won't let them hang out because your kids aren't wearing a mask, then whatever. We live in America, last I checked. All right. Anything else before we pray? Any other comments? Any other questions? Yes, Rachel. Yeah.
How do you
You want to get that, PJ? Thanks. Just because the people online can't hear her.
you teach your kids how to choose the right friends and keep good company, to judge someone's character and to want to hang around good influences, be a good influence, but also just like not make your best friend be the person that's going to bring you down.
Right. That's a really good question. It's a hard question. I would probably talk with them about what qualities they see in that individual. Say, is there anything you see that's negative? What do you think God would want us, ask them the question so they could come up with the answers themselves. Sometimes when they say it, they'll see it before you telling them. And try to pull it out of them so they see it as opposed to you saying, we're not doing this, bless God. You know what I mean? So that's probably, if it was me, that's probably what I would do. Yeah, that's a good question. And it's very common. Again, it goes to Leah's as well in terms of influence. Very, very. Friends, this is a separate issue. Maybe we'll do another class down the road, and I'm not going to keep us here tonight. But friends is another issue for another night and another topic, is associations. And we can spend some time on that later. I know it's getting late. Workers have done a great job downstairs, but that's another issue. Speaks to that, is friends and influences and peer pressure that's real. And teach your kids the courage to be different. Okay, we got some books back there. I'm going to have Mary pull some of it out. We got some door prizes here. Go ahead and just pull them out.
Here you go.
Okay, what do you got? Crystal Schuster. Okay, where's Crystal? Right over there. Hi, Crystal.
She can
Okay,
pick what she wants.
pick one you want. Any one of those 8 books. Yanni. Yanni is right there. Hey.
Uh-oh.
Okay. We've got 8 total. Wendy. Kurt, Wendy. Oh, okay. Oh. Okay. You're teaching next month. Can't read that.
That would be Elizabeth.
Okay, Elizabeth. I couldn't read it. Okay. We see if Elizabeth put 2 in there. Roy, Queen. Love it. Okay. Leah Perry. And Monica Dowell.
How many do we have left?
How many you have left, PJ?
2 more? 3.
Jason Perry. Can we do
Oh.
2 for the same family? Jennifer Kim.
Is that
Okay,
One
right
more?
over here.
one more?
Okay, and last one is Chase Sutton. All right, Dad. All right. Okay, I'm not taking that right now. Hey guys, thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoyed the fellowship. I thought the food all right? Yeah. It's good. Good questions, by the way. They gave me food for thought. Maybe down the road, maybe in June or July or something, we'll do it again. I know we got some folks out of town, some folks that couldn't make it. We'll do it again. If you have suggestions on what we would cover in the future and other ones that we may do, just shoot an email. Let us know, okay? Let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll be dismissed, all right? Brother Andrew, would you dismiss us in prayer?